Child development is a complex field in psychological studies. But as Previn Karyan has argued in a previous recording, parenting is a psychological task. We cannot run our parenting on instincts and intuition alone. Knowledge and wisdom are also required from those who work tirelessly with children. Their training and experience can be relied on to steer us through the most difficult issues in parent-child conflicts. And with me now is the child psychotherapist, supervisor and consultant, Lucy Fuller. She works in the difficult area of psychological help for young children between 5 and 13, as well as their parents. Lucy claims quite rightly that the most difficult task is to identify what the problem for the child really is, rather than getting swept away with symptom and behaviour treatments. Lucy is also one of the founder members of the Child Psychotherapy Council, an attempt to improve and increase the number of qualified and competent child psychotherapists. She's also created a therapy resource centre for families called 8AKP in Cambridge. Lucy, hello and welcome.
Good. Hi, Chrissie.
Hi. Now, I think we'd just like to have a look at the areas you particularly look at age group wise, but I just wanted to put to you the appalling figures that came out quite recently, which referred to mental health problems with children, and they included quite young children, and they were up in the last 6 months of 2021 by 77%. And I think we know there was a pandemic going on, but have you noticed that many coming through your doors? Is that figure, does that ring bells with you?
Well, yes, it does, because the number of inquiries that I'm getting in Cambridge from people that want some help in terms of difficulties that their children are having is becoming relentless. It's quite overwhelming, and it's really hard to find all the help that these people need.
Well, absolutely. And no doubt we'll come to CAMS in a minute. But if I could just ask you, I think it's very helpful for people watching this to, without sort of obviously being too specific with cases, but could you just tell us about the kind of problems that you're getting through the door?
Yes. Well, we're getting children with a low mood who have always been very happy and quite contented are suddenly becoming quite withdrawn. We're getting children that are it's coming out in their behaviours, what you might call acting out behaviours. So there's something going on for them emotionally. And also all sorts of things, even with younger children, eating disorders, some self-harming. So what these children are experiencing and the difficulties they're having come out in their behaviours.
Yes. So are we saying that goes right across the board of age from 5 upwards?
Yes, we're seeing it in 5-year-olds as well. I mean, when parents or teachers become concerned about the little ones and I get an inquiry from them, it's usually because a child's behaviour has changed in some way. And it's really difficult with the younger ones because they can't say what the problem is. They don't know themselves what's going on. They just feel very unsettled. And there's something emotionally that's off. They're not getting something that they need. So it is really hard to identify exactly what's causing behaviour difficulties.
So tell me how you try and, I was going to say, treat or understand at least what's going on for the children. Do they come with their parents? Do you always talk to them together, or do you try and separate them out?
The way I work, I do a mixture, but I always meet with parents first. So I want to find out a little bit about the family. I want to find a history for the child, right from pregnancy, right through to milestones. What were they like when they started school? What kind of baby were they? What kind of child were they? So I'm piecing together some background information. And the information about the family is really important as well. What kind of environment is the child living in? Are there any stresses around? Is the family under stress, which they might likely be? And that's all really important information before meeting the child.
Because I know children are amazingly sensitive very young if there has been a split in the family, if the parents are split up. And that can come out in lots of ways, can't it? I mean, you use the term acting out, which can be misunderstood for attention deficit disorder, which I'll get you to talk about in a second. But it's quite difficult to know what's going on, isn't it?
Yes, it is difficult. It's so difficult for the children to work out what's going on when parents separate. I mean, some parents, it becomes out of their control. It becomes very acrimonious, and although they try and hold it together for their children, and they try and shield their children from what's going on, a child will pick it up in some way, but the child doesn't know what it is. And so they're unsettled. And I mean, we know ourselves when we become unsettled that we might get grumpier, or we might lash out, or we might withdraw. And children can behave in the same way. And even when parents are really doing their absolute best to make it as easy as possible for their children when they separate, sometimes they try to carry on as normal, which is great, and I really sort of commend them for that. But what's happening isn't normal, and children need to understand in an appropriate way for them what's happening. They can sometimes think it's their fault, which is really difficult. Yes, and because nobody is sort of saying to them, this is what's happening. And we are going to separate. It is going to be difficult, but it's nothing to do with you. It's grown-up stuff. That can sometimes makes it a bit easier, but of course it's really, really hard.
Well, they have to get a grip quite early on to the fact that people don't like each other anymore. They're the parents that they both love. They may not know they love, but they do. That they both want around simply don't like each other anymore. And it's a very hard concept for anyone, really, particularly a small child.
Yes, it is very hard. And often when parents sort of come together, or they try to stay in the same house, or they holiday together, it needs to be made very clear to the children that this doesn't mean that you're getting back together again, because that's what children long for. You know, they long to think that, oh, it's just been difficult, but now mummy and daddy, they're back together, everything's going to be all right. So there's no easy answers, and there's no way of saying if you do it like this, you're just going to be fine. Everything's different for different people and for different families.
So I know children are often encouraged to play. You were talking about that earlier. And get this aggro out of them, perhaps. I mean, I think Anna Freud was one of the first people that talked about play therapy. I'm not sure, but this idea that you get your feelings out because you can't talk about it. Is that how it works?
Yes, that's one aspect of what we do as child psychotherapists. I mean, for even younger children, for all children really, there's another aspect to being a child psychotherapist, which is about giving a child an experience within the therapeutic environment of a different kind of relationship. It's one where you can really come alongside a child and can take their feelings with them, go with them in their feelings, without trying to solve things or without trying to make it better. And by that I mean very often with a child, when they're having a difficult time, parents want them to be okay. I mean, of course we do. We want our children to feel okay. We want them to be all right. We want them to be happy. And so when they're having difficult feelings, we can quite often say, oh, come on, we'll go outside, we'll go and do something to try and cheer them up. Or if a child is having a really angry episode, of course, parents can find it really, really hard to be with them and to cope with that. But one of the things I like to do with parents is to try and get them to understand that when your child is having really difficult feelings, to rather than try and fix them or to try and make them go away, is to actually be able to sit with them. In a way, you're saying to them, do you know what? You're having really horrible feelings at the moment, and that's okay. And I, as a grown-up, can withstand them, whereas it's really difficult for you. But of course, that's so much harder. And we can't get it right all the time. Of course, parents can't. Kids drive us mad. They do. I mean,
Yes, they do.
Of course they do. That's one of the things about having children. But so it's okay to lose it sometimes in a safe way, and it's okay to come up against them. But so long as afterwards everybody repatriates, everybody loves each other, everybody's fine with each other, just like they were before everything flared up, then that's fine, because that's showing children that you can have really awful, difficult feelings. As a family, as a parent, they can be absorbed, and then everything's okay again.
Yes, I think on an earlier interview I did with Previn Karian, he used this lovely word, being attuned to your children, to your child. It's an interesting word because it means that without them speaking, or you just kind of know, and I can speak as a parent, you just know when there's something not right. But of course that takes time and effort. And if you're trying to do 3 jobs and rush around and clean the house and get the garden done, it's extremely hard to remain attuned to your child all the time.
Yes, and it's not possible to remain attuned to your child all the time, or to anyone. And attunement is very much a therapist's word. And what it means is being without any stresses, without causing each other stress or without a stressful environment, and just being able to sit with each other comfortably. And of course, families are very, very busy. And to find time is hard, especially to put yourself out to find time. But that is something I also like to work with parents with. When, with any particular child, when is it just you and them? When do you have a chance to just be together?
I'm just going to come to parents in one second, but if we could just go back to children acting out. One of the real problems of our times is knowing when your child is acting out and knowing when they have ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and therefore would benefit from medication. So how is it? Are we over medicating young children?
Well, I mean, possibly. There's no easy answer to that. But I do think that in the UK, doctors aren't terribly willing to just hand out medication to young children, which I think is a good thing. And it's a debate that's out there. There's lots of people taking on that question about ADHD and about parenting and about environment. I mean, if people are looking for a diagnosis of ADHD, if they want to know for sure, then they would need to go to a psychiatrist, which is a medically trained doctor. It's not something that child psychotherapists do, but we would work with it and try and understand what's going on for this individual child as much as we can.
Just going back to parents, I don't know whether it's a generational thing, but there is this feeling that children are very resilient. That's a word that's often used, that they get over things and just a phase and they'll grow up and it'll all be fine. I suspect it's grandparents saying it to parents a lot, but it can really cause problems because it it stops the parent getting a grip on what can be wrong and getting some help from someone like you.
Yes, no, that's right. It can, because if you are just expecting a child to be resilient, then you're not trying to find out what the underlying problems are that are making them feel this way. But of course, as children go through puberty, they do have phases, more difficult phases, and some things do pass as children come out of adolescence. But as child psychotherapists, we have a look underneath that. And it's interesting how you talk about resilience, because I love the idea of the orchid and the dandelion. Whereas children, two children within the same family, they have the same experience, the same parental experience, the same environment, they might go to the same school. And yet one can be a dandelion, thinking of a dandelion as something that will grow anywhere. With next to no soil, whatever the weather conditions, however much somebody's trampled over it, it will still spring up and flower. Whereas the orchid is a very, very beautiful flower, but you have to have everything just right for it to flower, the right amount of soil, the right environment, etc. So often you cannot predict whether children are going to be orchids or dandelions. And a lot in between as well, of course.
And if you see a child at 7, can you make any sort of prediction of how things will be at 17 or 27?
Well, I mean, as psychotherapists, we never know anything for sure, but we can be very curious about things. And maybe, possibly, but I think what we want to do is to try and repair some of those things that aren't going right for this child at the moment, in the hope that things are different for them in 10 and 20 years' time.
I do remember, certainly from my own experience, when I was interested in this subject particularly, and that is that there's always been a terrible shortage of child psychotherapists. And of course, if you want one on the state and you don't want to pay money, that is a really hard task to find anybody.
And I think it's got harder and harder, especially recently and coming out of the pandemic. Yes, it is really difficult. There are very, very long waiting lists on the NHS, and although schools and centres do have therapists, they might not be psychotherapists. Again, there are very, very long waiting lists. And I think that a solution to that going forward is for more people to come forward for training to become child psychotherapists, which is part of what the Child Psychotherapy Council, that I'm one of the founding members of, it's a very new organisation that is to promote child psychotherapy and to encourage people to come forward and to train, and to make it more accessible to train as well. It's a very long and it can be a very expensive training, but we desperately need more funds and more access for people to become professionally qualified.
So how would someone go about being qualified, and what would it cost them?
Well, it would cost, if you become one, you go to college. It depends whether you've had any training before in being a therapist or working with children, but generally you start with an introductory course, then a 2-year diploma to become a psychotherapeutic counsellor, child and adolescent psychotherapeutic counsellor. Then you go on another 2 years to do an MA, where you become a child and adolescent psychotherapist. And then you need to be accredited. So you become accredited at the moment with the UKCP. This is something we'd love to do on the Child Psychotherapy Council as well. And you need 450 clinical hours to do that. So it's a really serious training. And it could cost you anything up to £20,000, possibly more. It is really expensive.
I'm wondering about, I think we hit on this idea when we talked to Andrew Samuels, and he was talking about when he'd been a young man in Cwmbran in Wales, and how children who were in difficulty used to come along to a youth centre, and he acted as a sounding board really, but they wanted to talk and he listened, and he was very impressed with that model, that in fact if often children can find someone safe to talk to, it can help enormously.
It can, and that's a very useful resource. There's not enough of it. Again, that would be wonderful if there was more of that, and if that was accessible in schools, which I think it is to a certain extent. But with that, working with children, there are certain safeguarding considerations and keeping children safe, rules around confidentiality. There is a lot that you need to be knowledgeable about and very careful about when working with children, because we must keep them safe.
Yes. I think people perhaps don't emphasise to parents enough that in fact it does, all this stuff you've talked about matters hugely, because we're talking about the rest of their lives. And what happens, I think, in the first couple of years of life, certainly by 5, can influence dramatically how people progress through their lives. How do you think we can get that message over to people more?
Yes, well, of course, the first 3 years of life is very important, and many the first child psychotherapists would talk about how the mother-baby relationship, or the parent-baby or the carer-baby, in those first 3 years does lay down the foundation for the future. And the key around there is attunement. It is exactly that, because a baby is searching for a relationship. As humans, we live in relationship with other people. And so that first relationship, if a mother is particularly depressed, if a mother is just sick and unavailable for the baby, then yes, that can cause problems very early on. And so it's important for new parents to understand the importance of that relationship, and where that's not possible, to have help. There are specialists, psychoanalytic child-parent psychotherapists, who we have one at 8AKP in Cambridge, who work with mothers and babies to help them with that initial relationship. Again, not enough people there to help, and it'd be great for more people to train to do that as well.
Yeah, so mother and baby, for those watching it, it's a time when you really have to be attuned. And even though a child may cry a lot, or you may get furious and you're not getting enough sleep and you didn't even want the baby in the first place, they really matter, those years.
Yes. And being a parent, I mean, when you become a parent, what do you know about being a parent? Well, you know how you were parented. So, a lot of the time, if you don't have a protocol of parenting that was terribly attuned, if you like, then it's going to be very difficult for you to know how to attune to your own baby. Of course it is. And that's incredibly hard.
So it must be quite interesting, because, in come the parents and the child to see your rooms, and you think, oh, well, that the child's having problems and the parents are describing the problems, but you're also finding out how the parents are getting on as parents and how they were parented. So it's quite a lot, isn't it?
It's really important, and it's very interesting to work with parents on their own way that they were parented, because they don't always think about that in terms of being a new parent themselves. And to reflect on what your own experience was is really valuable to find out why you feel the way you do about parenting, about discipline, about what children should or shouldn't do, and how that is reflected in your own thoughts of how it should be for your own children. And it can then be challenged once parents understand that.
Yes, it must be tricky for you, because you can't tell the parents what to do, but you hope they'll pick it up. They'll listen to you. I mean, discipline is a huge one, isn't it? if they were smacked as children, they would expect to smack theirs. What do? You say, hey, we don't smack anymore.
Well, I think when you work with parents on their own upbringing, it's always with empathy and with understanding. That was their experience. And it's sometimes really useful to parents to think about, well, as that child, can you remember how it felt? How was it? How do you wish it was? And how do you think it is for your child when certain things happen within the family? And parents are always trying their hardest to get it right. And it's not about what's right or wrong, it's just helping them to explore the way they parent and what other options might be and how it might be more helpful to their children to think about things differently or to do it differently. But it has to come from a place of understanding. That's what's really important.
Yes. So perhaps a final word of hope to parents who are watching this, thinking, don't think I'm getting it right, and the behaviour of my child concerns me. I don't know what lies beneath it, but I don't know what to do about it either. What would you say to them?
Yes. Well, sometimes it's really useful to put yourself in your children's shoes, to think about what do you think is going on for your child in that moment. It's easier said than done, but it's an idea called mentalization, putting yourself in someone else's shoes and thinking about their experience, and it can be really helpful. And certainly people like me, I work with just parents sometimes, partly because it's so hard to find therapists for children at the moment, but it might be easier for parents to come and talk to someone. And sometimes parents find it incredibly useful to talk about parenting, even if the child isn't part of the process, just to think about aspects of parenting, what's going on for their child, what their child might find helpful or not helpful, can be really helpful for parents.
Indeed, it's a future generation we're talking about, so it matters. Lucy, thank you so much. It's been really great talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.